I hope I don't mess up. I know my team is going to give me a lot of hard time if I do. Dude, I'm so blessed to have my team. Like, this is impossible to figure out without my team. Okay, last thing, I need to hit start. Start session. All right, we are on.
Boom.
Are we good? Just checking in with the team. Dr. Sully Sullivan, everybody. Welcome to this live event where we talk about things that's going on in life of our dental practices with a positive mindset. It's not the place to complain about. We all know what's going on. You can read the news. I don't. I gave up reading news 2 days ago. I feel really good. I actually forgot my sleep now.
It's not changing.
So why even waste your time on it, right?
Exactly.
So when I told my team that I really want to get you on a live thing to talk about what's going on, is I am worried. I'm really, really worried about some of our friends, some of our, bring him in. Dude, like people have, this is the fun part about this thing. Yeah, look at that. Bro. Look at that.
This is what our house looks like right now. When you're in quarantine and with a 15-month-old and a dog.
And it's only week 2.
Yeah, it's a cluster.
Dude, it's crazy. Yeah, so when I was talking to my team, I'm like, it's great that we have useful information. We bring speakers to talk about what's going on in the industry and things like that. But I'm worried about, like, we're millennials. Like, there's some stuff that's going on that we haven't been through yet. Like 2008. Oh. I mean, it went by me. I started my first company. I didn't even know what the crisis was. Like all I knew is something was going on. We're just gonna go and get started, and that's about it. So I guess, like, from your perspective, how do you look at this thing? Like, I know you're the kind of guy with no BS. You're just gonna go as it is, and you will tell us what you think. So, and by the way, we get in trouble once for my own fault for profanity. So we're gonna try to stay away from it. It's a live event that people might be streaming in the room with their kids. So Sully, do your best, man.
It's probably good that you get the
do your best. Yeah.
You bring up a really good point, and I think that's what's been probably the most interesting about this since the beginning, since it all really started happening a couple of weeks ago, or becoming a reality for us, is that, when 2008 happened, I had no real idea that things were going on. I mean, I was still, I had just graduated high school. Yep. So I'm in college, like I'm kind of living the dream in college. I still tied to my parents' insurance and stuff like that. So, I didn't really know exactly what all was going on. And then we've really lived in since then, 12 years of just prosperity and economic growth and booming, low interest rates, all these things that really there's been very little, it's the challenge of competition. But other than that, we've had it pretty good. And so then all of a sudden this comes in, it's like, holy cow, how do we react? Have we been saving? I think it's going to be a real telltale of, like, where people are at on what we've done as a generation as far as, like, being prepared for something like this, because it's something that, like, we've been told could happen, but may never actually happen. My big thing is we can't. At first, I was very, like, tried to be kind of polarizing with the virus. Like, what do I think? What do I think about this, that? And now I've gotten to a good place, which I feel like has been helpful. And that's, aside from what you think about the severity of the virus, the severity of the spread, the economic impact, all this stuff, it's very important that we deal with just the reality of the ramifications at bay. And that is that, hey, we're going to be shut down for a while. So we can be pessimistic or we can be optimistic about that. And I think the big thing is trying to plan for the worst, hope for the best. And that's what
Mhm.
we've tried to do, is really start to, let's be proactive in our thinking. Let's not sit still. Let's not be idle. Let's not be depressed about this. So let's make the decisions that we can based off the information we have, and then constantly be reevaluating things, to set us up for success. Because the reality is we're going to come out of this at some point, and there's a lot of dentistry that's going to need to be done. And so I think it's just got to be a perspective that we go into it with.
Yeah. What's your take on, do you think it's gonna, I'm having discussions with like several of my friends about how it's gonna come back for dentistry, and do you think it's gonna be from red to green, or are we gonna hit a little yellow light before it goes to green?
I think it's going to be, regional. I really do. I think that's, it's going to be, I think what we're going to see is that areas like New York are going to respond a lot differently than rural Nebraska, or, there's going to be just the way that our culture is, the way we're set up, the way where we live, how we interact. I think you're going to just see it happen differently in different places. There's two kind of sides to this. One is what does the government allow us to do, okay, like from their perspective, and then two, how does the patient respond, right? Like, how quickly is the patient ready to have dentistry done? So I've kind of looked at things from both sides from that standpoint. I think that we are going to get, I think they're going to have to give us a green light on expanding this definition of emergency treatment sooner rather than later. You can only allow, healthcare to be stopped for so long, right? Primary
Mm-hmm.
care visits, broken teeth, decay. I mean, you can pause on some level prophies and stuff like that for longer, but on some level you can only, I mean, think about it, we've got a ton of patients in the middle of treatment, right? Like where
Mm-hmm.
they're in temporaries, and so right now we're in like a very, very strong hold, right? Like swelling. I mean, and if you really look at like what we really are supposed to be doing, like it's pretty black and white. I mean, it's like if they're going to the ER, treat them. If not, and like you can make that grayer if you want, I guess, in some areas. But for the general at large, it's pretty emergency or not emergency. Well, that's going to have to expand, I think, the longer this goes. We can't be 2 months from not doing dentistry and allowing things just to, because we had patients who had problems that were on the cusp of a root canal, that those are going to now turn into a root canal. So like we're just gonna have that happen. So I think what we're going to see is a very yellow light situation on the dentistry side, or on the doctor side, and then I think we will get a green light, pretty red green on the elective preventative at some point. Who knows when that is? And then it's just going to be, how do the patients respond? And again, I think that's going to be regional, right? Like, I mean, I was just at my parents' lake house this past weekend doing a little backcountry quarantine, and
Mm-hmm.
up there, dude, it was like life is normal. There's no, like the golf course was packed, Walmart was packed, Tractor Supply's packed. Like it's like they don't even know what's happening. So I think they all think it's still like a political hoax or something. So I think that side, that those people are going to be willing to come back quicker than people who are at ground zero. Chicago, New York, these big metropolitan cities that naturally are going to get harder. I think patients are going to be way less ready to come back in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's going to be definitely
But
interesting.
I tell you what I do think, though. I do think that I think we are going to be busy, though. I think it may look a little different because we may not have full teams. I think we got to be prepared to not bring back our whole team at once, that we may be running a doctor and some assistants, that sort of thing. But there is going to be a lot of dentistry to do. I mean, like I said, just from
Mm-hmm.
the broken teeth, the cavities. I mean, elective dentistry may take a hit, but dude, there's going to be a lot of dentistry to come back to. And I think then again, it's going to be really important that we're willing to potentially expand hours at the beginning. Work, like I'm planning on working Fridays. Like who would have thought that? But being flexible in how we, and just being flexible in how we see these patients, because when we get that green light to actually start doing more routine doctor production, we got to be ready to go.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? Like, this is what I'm interested in right now. When we go through this thing, as millennials, right? One of the hardest things is how do we manage this? Because I talk about this with my team a lot too. Like, you can make really, like, this is the moment where your dignity is going to get tested. Either you're a team member, either you're an office manager, either you're a doctor, either you're a business owner or associate. We're going to get tested as millennials as there's no tomorrow. Like, how are you going to respond to things? Yes, you're going to get hit, but how are you going to respond? How are you going to act on these things? Especially for the doctors that are business owners. I mean, we've talked about this yesterday, and I was trying to tell Tim, who was our guest on unemployment and HR and all these things. He's like, people are doing left and right, letting team members go and then bring them back, and then go and bring them back because this Family Care Act that's going to be launching today, and then there's this and there's that. And I'm like, you might be like just turning 30, right? And you just graduated from dental school and you have an office and you're like, holy guacamole, like all that on top of your shoulders. And then you get home and then you got kids and significant other, and then you have to deal with it. And like, you're going to get majorly tested as a leader right now, and you may bend.
Yeah. So I think what's really going to define it is it's going to show us who's got hustle and who doesn't have hustle. Because when we talk about this off the air, just when we're together and whatnot, there's something about certain people that just have that ability to grind and make it. And so like, I look at you and I'm like, you know what, there's no issue. The Tigers would come out of this okay, right? Because you have some sort of intangible quality that's like, I'm going to sacrifice and do what I have to do to be successful. Right now, you're right. That means a 30-year-old in an owner position who has to figure out how to navigate all these different stuff. Now, the good part is we're really not being like left on an island. I mean, if you look at all the stuff that's getting passed, I mean, gosh, if we know we can defer loans, we know we can defer mortgages and rent. Most banks are all doing that. So if you've laid off your team, which I think is the appropriate decision right now, because we know we're getting, they're going to get in Tennessee $875 a week, which is good money right now given everything.
And the $1,200 check per person,
and a $1,200 check. And then the PPP stuff's coming into play for the 8 weeks of things there. On our employees, assuming you take the right initiative and you implement these and do this in a good way, which again, that takes you researching, reaching out to your peers. I mean, gosh, I have couple groups of like 10 or 12 doctors. We're sharing information, bouncing stuff off each other. I mean, this is where it really is awesome to have a community, right? Mm-hmm. To have a like-minded individuals that you can lean on. I mean, I've been texting, you obviously know T-Bone's a big mentor to him every day, and we're relaying that down to our mastermind groups, et cetera, because we're staying, and that community is so helpful because if you think between 10 dentists in a text thread, that may be 10 different CPAs, 10 different advisors. So we're getting just an overwhelming wealth of information that we're sharing with each other to help out. So I can't imagine going through this on an island. I mean, I think that's a big takeaway too, is, if you feel like that, then trying to plug yourself into community of young dentists, because that's where I think us as a generation can really kind of band together, so to speak, and work through it. Then, once you figure that out and you get your team situated and you've deferred a lot of this stuff, you really can start to get your overhead down to very minimal, which means, yeah, there's no money coming in, but there's not a lot of money. There's not a lot of expenses either. And at that point, then it just gets down to like we were when we started. You're willing to eat ramen noodles, to cut back eating out, to cut back spending money on whatever. And shoot, we're all quarantined anyway, so it's like how much.
That's so right. That's what I'm. Yeah, it's not like somebody's gonna put on Insta that they're in a boat. Like we're all sitting home.
Oh, right. So like, I mean, I can spend money on Netflix and crap like that. Like ultimately, we should be able. Not only is our income obviously being drastically. I mean, like I'm not gonna get a paycheck for a month, right? I mean, other than the month that's just in the bank, but like my expenses should also basically drastically be decreasing. So I think it's important to, and that's where I think it's going to be a defining moment for our generation, because we will either cower and not be fit for ownership, in which case I think we'll see dentists sell their practices or just give up, or and the corporate wave will continue to grow. Or I think there'll be a lot of us that really, really take advantage of it. And if anything, it can be a blessing in disguise. I mean, assuming we get back, let's say, assuming we can really start doing some doctor production in May. Okay, so that's another month that it's cooled down enough to which I think that they're going to have to let us do some sort of more emergent type care. Okay, and if that's the case, we're running a small team. That's, emergent care is productive dentistry. We got to think about that too, Tiger. And, hygiene is not a big producer for us, right? It's crowns, root canals, extractions. And so a lot of the emergent stuff, the stuff that we're going to get allowed to do initially, is going to be pretty productive stuff. So, assuming you can weather that initial storm, this 30 days could be an amazing time for you to retrospectively look at last year, learn more about your practice, learn more about your overhead, learn more about, the way you do things. I mean, right now there's more free CE and information than ever before. And so I think that there's, and I'll be honest. Last week I was kind of depressed. I was like, I don't want to watch any webinars, and I just had to get over that mental hump, right? I had to get over okay, let's get beyond this and let's get back on track. And now everything is, we're moving forward. And I think that's going to be a mental thing that most of our peers have to do is take a second to deal with it. But at some point you got to put a foot in the sand and say, this is what we've been dealt. How can we make the most of it so that when we come back, and that's what I told my team. I've been really trying to stay in touch with my team and encourage them, because
Andrew,
when we do come back, I need them. Yeah, I need them ready to go. And so they've been cool with that.
So can we talk about that mental hump that you had last week?
Yeah, of course.
What made you to get into it? How did you talk yourself into it?
I think I was a little overwhelmed with dealing with trying to figure out the HR part of it, right? Just how do you realize you've got, in our case, 11 families that essentially are leading on decisions that I'm making. I struggled with the layoff, because to me, I didn't like the optics of it. I felt like I was giving up. I felt like I was letting my team down, like I should be carrying them. And that's where having, I think, mentors was really helpful, because I've realized since then that it has nothing, it was more probably a pride thing for me, and that it's really more of a strategy than anything. And I think that's important that people get, is that both the team members and the doctors, because it's not easy on us doctors or, people who are leaders and owners, any owning potential, to have to go, that's not something we want to do. But I also know that it's super important that in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whenever it is that we get going again, I gotta be there. We gotta have a job for them to come back to. And so there's a strategy to how can I maximize things for my employees, maximize things for the business, for all of us to weather the storm. And And I think once I got over that, that was helpful. Part of it is too, is just the overwhelm of like, how long could this go on? Um,
And then there's probably, as you were saying, there's probably some uncertainty on the team members too. I'm just like out of nowhere, this thought came in. Like, imagine if you're a team member and a doctor is trying to hold on to you as a whole team. And as a team member, how do you know how much reserves they got? Like, maybe unemployment is the safe route, just to go and make sure that you can then bring that check to the table, because you don't know if the dentist and the office had enough cash flow to start saving money before this whole thing started.
right. And like we were in a lucky position on some level because we are about to build this new building, right? So we've been saving a lot of cash for the new building. So this may delay us a little bit on that because we may run through some of that cash, but we were a little more uniquely prepared because we had done that. A lot of dental offices, especially when you're starting investing in technology and equipment and all this stuff, I think it's not uncommon for a practice to kind of live and run paycheck to paycheck. And what you can't have is you can't have the practice going under. If the practice goes under, no one has jobs, right? That has to be discussed. I mean, that's not a mean thing to say, but if the practice doesn't make it, no one makes it.
Mm-hmm.
And then then I think for me it was, I told my team, I said, we're everyone's going to get through this. We will get through this, but I also know that the government's going to help us, and we're somewhat foolish to try to basically not take and utilize their money. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're passing all these bills. And so that's where the strategy comes into, is like, hey, let's use this and leverage this, because if we get to a point where I run out of my money, then we're stuck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a question that came in. So, what advice do you have for millennial dental staff, like dental teams? What can we learn from this? Like, you and I talked about primarily about what's going on in a dentist head and a business owner head, but as a our generation team member.
So the biggest one, I think, is expanding your skill set. So just like us as dentists, like right now for like the young millennial dentist, when you come back, if you've got a pretty expanded skill set, you're going to be able to survive, because if you can do root canals, if you can see kids, if you can do extractions, if you can do whatever, then look, there's going to be dentistry to do. You can survive. It's the same thing with employees. The people that bring more to the table, that can wear multiple hats, they have a significant advantage over people. And not to be negative, or not to be, I'm trying to word that. I think there's just a reality that there are certain people will have to come back in certain roles. I don't think we're going to have like a green light, red light, to your point. The whole team's back. And so, people that can wear, that can help, that can assist, that can answer the phone, that can call insurance, that can schedule patients, that know how to take x-rays, that know how to that do a lot of things, that are very well cross-trained. That's going to continue to be important. It's also the same thing. It's just, even once we get on this crisis, people that are cross-trained are so much more valuable anyways. So it's a great opportunity for those people who have their own free time to be figuring out and learning and using these webinars, or going in and learning from someone else in the office. Maybe you're an assistant. Do you have somebody in your office right now that's at the front office filing insurance claims, that you could go and learn from them during this downtime? If it makes sense and your doctor's cool with it. But to me, that's what I would like to see more of, is like, how can they also leverage this time? Now, the kind of the flip side of that I would encourage them to do is, and this is what I've told my team to do, is be ready to make the same sacrifices. As soon as we started getting into this, I told them, I said, hey, you need to be calling your banks, see if you can get your mortgages deferred, see if you can get your whatever payments deferred. If your credit card companies will give you forgiveness, or you need to be taking the same proactive steps that we're doing, because ultimately that's how we all are be more prepared and weather the storm.
Yeah. I think, to your point, one of the biggest things for me was too is just realize and admit that I wasn't the one who created the virus, right? So like I didn't call it in. So like let's just figure out how to get through this together. I think
Right.
that's the big message that you have.
No, exactly. And again, there's help coming, but like even let's take the CARES PPP stuff. Like that's still going to be like a process, right? Like we still gotta. Hopefully, we can get all that filled out this week. But then, like, we don't know when the money's going to get there, when things are gonna transpire. Shoot, how your doctor is going to utilize that, or what his advisors are telling him. And so, I just think that as a team member, it's important to again keep the same kind of, hey, let's be optimistic, but at the same time, let's continue to prepare and make basically good decisions that help the team, right? That help the practice. Because if all of us are willing to live off a little less, gosh, the amount of stress that helps across the board, is really, really, important.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a doctor who's like had some of his team members be like, hey, we're good right now. Like my husband's, retired or has had a pension and like we've got the money. I'd rather not take a paycheck during this time so you can help so and so out more, whatever. Like that's how that for team members, right? For sticking together. And so I just think it's those type things that, again, the more that we can be self-sufficient, then the better that's going to help each individual team make it through.
Yeah. It's back to that same point about being the leaders. I think one of the things is that's going to play out right now is, number one, how much that leadership foundation have you built with your team before? It's all going to come out now, right?
Gosh,
So
yeah.
if you have been a really good leader, well, you're going to be fine. If you've been a, part of my language, pretty shitty leader, then it's going to be really, really difficult, like to keep the team and things like that. And I think that's going to come out pretty strong. And the second one too is, like that whole communication within a team. Like, how do you communicate, right? Like, how do you learn to deliver the tough news, right? How do you say, okay, so when we do come back, that we hit that yellow, I do need like Sully and this person or that person to come back, but you're going to have to wait until we fully go into the green, right? Or another tough thing is going to be, most likely when we do come back, like the CDC will put so many guidelines and requirements on how we see patients. Like, just to take my one man opinion, I have no idea if it's going to be true or not. But even sport tests that we do once a week right now are required to do once a week. It's just going to be like Canada, once a day. Like, you're going to have to do it, right? And so how do we prepare for things like that and make sure that the team members, when they come back too, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be totally different in the way we do things. And I mean, to your point, we really need to take this time to learn and get prepared for things like that when we do need to come back and hit the yellow or the green.
Right. No, I think yeah, you're right. I hope you're wrong on some of that, by the way. You probably aren't. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how things change and what kind of guidelines and restrictions happen. Probably so much of that will depend on, what we find out, more about this virus and stuff like it. But yeah, I just think there's got to be a level of flexibility that we all have. You go back to your leader point. This also is an opportunity to really become a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easier to be a leader in the good times, and you can have been a shoddy leader, so to speak, and still have now an opportunity to be a better one. And I think that's a big take home, is that now more than ever, team members are looking to whoever they're working for to provide guidance, right? Whether you turn on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Facebook, all this stuff, it's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknown. And so I think it's very important that we're honest, open, and transparent with them, but also project, that it's going to be okay, that we're going to get through this. Because I really believe that. Like, I think that is for overarching offices, majority of offices, that's going to be the theme. And the government's doing way too much to help prop up a lot of that to help us. That I think that, yes, it will be a little different and you have to be flexible, but it's going to be okay. And I really believe that it's important that we are honest with them. We don't lie to them. But at the same time, we let them know that, because again, at some point we're going to be given like full green light, and some offices are going to be very prepared for that and some won't be. And once we get that, maybe it's July, maybe it's August, who knows when that full green light is, dentistry is not going away. Like it's not. Like people need, we're going to need hygiene. We're going to need front office. We're going to need assistants. We're going to need everybody. So like there's going to be, and there's going to be an excess of stuff because of the backlog that we've had. So yes, it may be slow, but I think that once we get to that point, it'll be there. So that's what I'm trying to do, is constantly keep my team sharp, by having some weekly kind of meetings, touching base on things, and then encouraging them, but also being realistic that, hey, this could go on to May. Even in May, it may be part of the team, not all the team. But hey, that's okay. Like that we're all going to still get through it. We'll cross those bridges when we come to it. I'll tell you honestly, Tiger, I've been a little annoyed with a lot of the governing bodies, even governors, and on some level, just everybody, about the need to project further along than 2 weeks or so. I don't see the benefit of it. Like certain states, saying, well, we're going to be closed for dental, till end of May or June. And I understand hey, let's plan for the worst, but at the same time, we just don't know what 2 weeks looks like,
Exactly.
I mean, that's a lot of time. And I mean, we've got the smartest people in the world working on ways to combat it. I think that the weather turning nationwide is going to have an impact. As we move into summer, typically these type of viruses don't do great. So that's going to be helpful. I think that's been something that's been annoying to me. And so at our office, we've really lived on hey, we're taking this almost week by week or every 2 weeks by 2 weeks, because it's just really, we don't have any more information than that.
I agree with you. I agree, at least on the point that nobody has a crystal ball.
Right.
We just, as honest as we can get is we know probably for a week. Like, shoot, man, we had 3 emergency plans at our company, right? Like, to talk about, like, okay, so we're going to do this. No, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And it's always adjusting. Like an emergency plan is just readjusting things the way you do. Somebody does this. Maybe next time we're going to do a different role. I agree with you. It's a week by week thing that we're going to have to tackle. I also do want to bring back that point that you said about the spending. So I think you and I talked on your podcast about a year ago about, like, not to get too negative about this, but like dentistry is pretty high up in the suicide rate. And, like we've talked about that the biggest reason why it happens is that there's just so much stress, right? And the stress caused between what you have in the office and what you have at home. And then, the drive between the home and the office is usually when you're just by yourself and thinking about things. Right. And so I think maybe it is a good time to actually sit down and start cutting back on things and having honest conversations about, look, like these things will be happening. Like, some people said that you can't go for, like, not speaking about the virus, start talking about the economical impact of this. Like, we were technically started to preparing for this, like at least discussing these things about 2 to 4 years ago or 4 to 2 years ago, like that possibly the economy might go down and things like that, because it always goes in the cycles. And so I think this is just another wake-up call. And especially when people put things on millennials and on us, like on our generation, saying like we complain about the latte that's not like closing properly and we create a big thing, right, like thing out of it, or like the milk is not the right choice. So, to some degree it's true, maybe because we haven't lived through it, but hopefully for us too, like, I mean, so I haven't been in Starbucks in 2 weeks now, so big deal, right? So I don't have my favorite coffee, so you just brew it at home. So hopefully that will even up some things in our lives too.
Well, and I'll tell you one thing I've been doing, which kind of sounds kind of cheesy, but it's been really good. But a couple months ago, I had started kind of getting into trying to do some meditation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a leader, try to like be more even keel with just what would happen at the office with your patients or sometimes with the team, and not trying to be so reactive. And it's funny. It's been like incredibly helpful, and it's been really, really great for me just during all this stuff because it's allowed me to be, I don't know, not just be less reactive and be less up down emotionally about stuff and know that, hey, it's okay. So, I downloaded I don't know, the Calm app,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a great deal. And they have like all these like guided meditations and stuff so that's kind of how I started. And, but I'll tell you what, it's amazing how like 10, 15 minutes a day, just resting in the moment and, that, hey, it's okay right now. And that I don't have to, because gosh, we are so, I think millennials are bad about it too. We're just so, we want to project and plan and like have it all lined up and figured out. And it's like, this is just one of those times where we can't do it. You can't,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you just don't know. So being able to step back, live in the moment, and just breathe in that has been, gosh, incredibly, incredibly helpful, for me.
That's
So
awesome.
that's something to think about too.
What's your routine?
Well, I try to do it in the mornings, with Hugh, a little Hugh man run around. That can be a little challenging, but typically I try to do it in the mornings. I try to get up, I get him out of bed, and then Caroline will feed him breakfast, and I'll have coffee and kind of do that. But yeah, it's, and even, gosh, even when you're just, I found that like in the heat of a moment or the heat of the day, when there's something going on, if you can just take, gosh, a couple minutes just to sit back and just breathe and think on that before reacting, it is just, it's great. So I think that's something that really people, because look, if there's something we know we've got over the next couple weeks, it should be time.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a lot of personal time. So I think it's, when you talk about the suicide stuff, that's a real deal. Depression's a real deal right now with all this stuff. I mean, I just looked at the stock market just to see. I mean, it's a terrible day. And it's going to be a terrible, probably a couple weeks until at some point it's going to make a turn and life will go on. Like we will, like that. That's just what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, being able to rest in it being out of your control and learning to be okay with that, um, is really going to help people as we go through these coming weeks. Because otherwise, if you try to control it and you try to micromanage it and you keep the news on every single day and you're constantly on Facebook and you're doing all this stuff and you're living with that, it's just going to constantly infuse, fear, negativity, and all these things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to take a couple questions from people.
Yep.
How about the patients that will have the aerosol fear after the practice open back up? How do we make sure that patients feel safe in our practice?
I think it's all about the way we handle that. I mean, we've always been an office that's used Dry Shield, and we've had great luck with that. And the mouthpieces, Isolight's the other one that a lot of people use. I think we'll probably use that more now than ever, just because it'll be a great thing to discuss with patients when they have those questions. Like, hey, we actually use this, and like there's a lot of literature that shows that it's reducing so much of that aerosols because of the the way the suctions work and that sort of thing. Of having of well, to your point about what you were saying about how we may have more guidelines, I think patients are going to be way more curious about how we do things now. So I think it's just a matter of spinning a lot of what we've all always done, just being more proactive about being encouraging our patients with the confidence that it's okay.
Mm-hmm. So probably not just a couple more questions. The one that I have for you is, let's just say, I used that example yesterday. So let's just say I'm a dentist. I had a startup, and I was lucky enough to start it in the last 6 months. Everything was good up until this point, and holy cow, what happened? I had to let my team go. And with all the new stuff that's coming out, I'm a little bit on Facebook, but technically, what are my options? Like, if I know that I have a month, how would I say, okay, I just heard Dr. Sully say, just sit back, reevaluate your practice, look at the last year, look at the things, and see, like, expand your skill set. Like, I really love that concept that you said. So, where would I start? Like, is it a spreadsheet that I need to sit down and evaluate? Buck Tiger to get all his cell phone numbers, contact him. Like, where do I start?
Okay, so that's a lot of good places to start there. I think. Okay, so I'll break it down in two ways. I think one is we need to have a plan for the 7 to 10 days prior to the green light. Okay, and
Green
then
or yellow?
whatever color, yellow light. Okay, whenever we go from complete emergency treatment to some other option.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, that's going to be most likely at least a month from when we were really running on a normal. Okay. So we need to be together with our team, being prepared, going over schedule, going over things so that we come back and we're firing on all cylinders. Up until that point, we need to be making sure that we have followed up on all outstanding insurance claims, that we have evaluated. I think overhead's a big one, kind of what we did last year. Where were we spending money? Was it good use of money? Did our marketing work? Did it not work? Developing a strategy from all that perspective, because what I think people miss is that if you don't do that now, as soon as we get back going, I think when we get back going, the doctor is going to be busy. And if the doctor and the front office are busy specifically, that means that a lot of this auxiliary stuff that kind of gets done in the down days, et cetera, there's not going to be much time to do that stuff. So I think it's very important that a lot of those things are taken care of now, so that when we get going, we may not have as many team meetings, because we're trying to see patients. So but shoot, we should be having all that done, right now. So if there's things that you want to implement, tweak, for instance, like say you want to start taking photos on all your new patients or existing patients, like with DSLR cameras, like now is the time to implement that. Now is the time to do that. To me, developing a strategy of, okay, what's our how can we be better in the time off? And then a strategy for, hey, we are 7 days away or 1 week away from where we can kind of go. What does that look like? What's the schedule look like? How are we planning on seeing patients and doing that?
Mm-hmm. And just on that, while we're on the subject, how do you typically recommend it? I mean, do you have a couple masterminds and you guys talk about business quite a lot? How do you look back and say, I need to improve my skills? Like, where does it start? Like, or expand my skill set?
So the very first one that I tell everybody to do always is annual patient value. So it's super easy to do. Take your 2019 collections and divide that by how many patients you saw, like your active patient count, basically. So just to give you like an example, let's say that you have $1 million practice,
mm-hmm.
And you saw, let's say, 2,000 unique patients.
Mm-hmm.
That means that your annual patient value is $500, meaning every patient is worth $500 to you on a yearly basis. To me, I love that number because it tells you a lot about what you're getting out of each patient. Okay. So a practice that say does a lot of general dentistry, very bread and butter dentistry, not a lot of expansive procedures, or very real hygiene heavy, or not a lot of technology or stuff like that, they're going to tend to be a lower number. Okay, so maybe you're only getting $200, $300, $400 out of a patient. The flip side is that if you've got a very high number, then that means that you're doing a really good job of extracting more out of patients. So just I'll give you a perspective. Ours runs, and I think we're a pretty good example of a higher running office because between my dad and I, we do a lot of procedures, right? Implants, periosurgery, adult ortho, kids, root canals, Botox, Juvederm, gum surgery, like sedation, IV sedation. Like we cover a gambit of things. So instead of Tiger, you coming in and needing a root canal, me saying I can't do it, I just referred money out. It stays in our office, right? So we typically run right around $1,000 per patient. That also means that we're presenting a lot of treatment to patients because if you don't present the treatment, then they can't say yes to it, right? And that's where stuff like photography, Tebow and I talk a lot about that, that when you look at case acceptance, I think the real problem a lot of offices have is they don't diagnose enough dentistry. They don't actually tell patients they need the dentistry that's actually going on. Cone beam CT is huge for that. So to me, that's a great way to look at it because if you look back at last year and you're like, gosh, we only averaged $350 per patient, then your practice has an unbelievable amount of opportunity to improve. And it's going to improve in two ways. One, you got to expand your clinical skill set. And then two, you've got to start utilizing technology, be it photos, cone beam, any diagnostic tool that you can to show patients more opportunities for more dentistry. And I'm not talking about being over diagnosis. That's like I like him under diagnosis when it comes to like cavities like that. But it's giving patients the opportunity to say yes to the best, showing them they have crowded teeth. Like if you just talk to crowded teeth with every patient that had crowded teeth, you'll probably have more people say yes to ortho. But if you never talk to them about it, then you're gonna see less. So I love that number. Now, one caveat to take into account with that number, though, when you look at it, is that it can vary whether you're an insurance-based practice or a fee-for-service practice. So, based practice, that number will be lower just because your fees are lower. So it's going to be harder to be higher up, but you've got more patients typically, so it extrapolates higher. Versus if you're a fee-for-service, you really want that number to be higher because if it's not, then you're not getting the benefit of your fee-for-service.
Right. Most doctors would listen to you right now and say, yeah, right, like we don't know when this whole thing comes back and we don't know how to afford it. Do you think it's a good time to actually reach out to the vendors and try to get a deal?
Yes and no. I think it's important to, I think the first thing we got to figure out is, and it's going to depend for people, right? I mean, how much do you have saved? How big is your base that you're coming back to? I think once we know more, again, this is the whole, let's not extrapolate out more than what we know. Then I think that, yes, it could be a really good opportunity. I'm telling you, the doctors that come out of this and are willing to risk more on their own education, meaning pushing their skill set and pushing technology and all that, will be 10 times. Do what? Yeah, and their team skill set. Exactly. Yeah, totally agree. The ones that do that will fly out of this. The ones that hug down, right, that start trying to cut costs, get their overhead down to 30%, like just doing stupid stuff, like start doing their own hygiene and stuff like that. Like those are the offices that are going to struggle, and it will take them so much more time to climb out. So I think that there's a balance of not being overly confident, but being willing to continue to bet on yourself, bet on your practice, bet on your team. And I think the ones that do that, once we get going, they'll never even experience a recession. I mean, they just they'll I'm confident in saying that, not to brag about us, but we have such a killer team, and we're so ready that our mindset's going to be, I don't want to, don't think we will, and won't really let it happen that we will have a significant dip. It just won't. We will will our way through it.
Yeah.
Whereas some people are really going to, they're going to try to cut back so much stuff it inhibits their own growth.
If you're the team member and you're listening to this, and you're like, all right, I want to help my doctor, I want to help my office, because I know most dental assistants are amazing people. Most of them that are listening to this, they're just having all these questions and they want to get to this. So if, for example, somehow they figured out that number 500 to, that's what they did, or even just simply listening to you saying, all right, I want to build my skill set as a team member so that when we come back, we're ready to go. So what are the clinical or non-clinical things, or maybe like 1, 2, 3 in clinical and 1, 2, 3 in non-clinical? Like, what are your thoughts for the team members?
So I think there's a couple. I think a couple that jump out at me. One, if they're already like a Zen client, or whether that's a huge opportunity, right? I mean, like, Tiger, how much time do I spend with Zen? Like, do I spend any time? Like, do I even know what's going on?
Probably not as much, but Andrea.
Oh yeah, well, that's my point. Is Andrea literally, like, she's like she's an all-star. Like, she knows everything about this, right? So the amount of time that buys me by not having to deal with anything as it relates to supplies, inventory, pricing, all that stuff is huge. Because this is like my big thing. I always say this: we only have so much bandwidth, right? Like, we can only handle so much at one time. And if you start focusing on something else, then something else suffers. Unless you empower team members to take ownership of things so that when you move as the doctor somewhere else, that doesn't suffer. So, like, that's a great example. Like, Andrea's taken that over so well that, like, I don't even know what's happening. I think adult ortho is another one that's huge. Celeste in our office does all of our ortho stuff. Whether it's we use 6 Month Smiles. They're clear aligners and they're brackets and wires. But a lot of team members, I mean, gosh, right now, I'm sure all these companies like, ClearCorrect, Invisalign, SureSmile, whatever it is, 6 Month Smiles, they're probably doing all doing tons of free webinars, tons of free CE. And then if they are offering courses, I guarantee you there's tons of discounts. So, like, that's a great way to improve your skill set, because, like, I don't even see, I mean, like, the ortho part, the role I play, again, is like very minimal. Sleep's a huge one. We talk a ton about sleep in our practice, and that's a very, very team-driven thing. Again, team members can learn a ton about sleep right now just with online CE. That if those are conversations they can start having with patients that ultimately lead to production. Obviously, we have some expanded function assistance. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. That's a bigger expense, but I mean, is a huge possibility there. I think those are the big ones. Anything that team members can take off the doctor's plate is very helpful. 3D printing is a big one. There's going to be a lot of offices now have 3D printers. That's an unbelievable area for team members to take the load off the doctor and really carry a lot. I mean, Andrea does all that too. She basically handles everything with Zen, and like I don't even know like how to 3D print anything. Like, she does it all. So it's just and there's going to be a lot of cool opportunity with 3D printing, obviously, because of the lower cost and being able to save us money. So that's another area where, when anything that assistants specifically can do to help cut down on lab costs is only providing themselves with more job security. The better they can get at staining and glazing. Like, we're a big CEREC office, right? So, like, they could be getting better at that. Man, I'm coming up with some good ones over here.
Dude, this is awesome. If you don't mind, my team, Irene on my team will send you this list at the end, after this call. Would you be able to put some company names or like the resources that assistants can actually go in and try to find it?
Yeah, of course.
Of course. That would be awesome. Yeah. And I think another one, I don't know if Andrea's watching or not, we need to bring her on this thing.
No, you do. Yeah, she's a rock star. Yeah.
So if she's, I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at the list. I don't know. There's somebody with an A from Nashville. Maybe that's her. So Andre, if you're watching, I'll tell Irina to reach out to you and bring her in. Like,
She's gonna kill me.
But you gotta be honest. She's awesome. Like I remember, I came to your office and you're like, you don't need to talk to me. You need to talk to her. No. She comes back with like, you want feedback? All right, let's go. Boom.
but it's been great, right? Because like how empowering that is for you, you know, to get something straight from the people on the ground that are dealing with it every day. And like, dude, she's told me like multiple times how like some of the conversations y'all had that day have had like significant impact on the workflow or the way they do things. And like that's what it's ultimately all about. But that's the thing. I think to doctors listening, you have to give your people opportunities to flourish. You just can't micromanage everybody. And we've all got really good people and really good team members. And when you allow them to kind of get in that position and flourish, you know, it does really, everybody wins. I mean, the team members win, we win, they make more money, I make more money. Like it's just a better overall vibe at the office.
Mm-hmm. Last question, actually two more. Leadership. Do you have a quote that you go by?
A quote?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh.
Or a book.
I like Leaders Eat Last. That's a good one. Simon Sinek. I'm trying to think what other books that I've read. You know, I really don't have a quote. I probably should have a quote.
There's one good one. I'll send you. I'm trying to remember. John, not the guy who did the Southwest, the Kellier.
Yeah,
it's something like power is reserved to pulling boats and something. And with teams, it's like with the leadership, it's all about encouragement. Something like that. So I'll find it. I'll send it to you.
Okay, I do have one good one that I probably do kind of live my life that I think pertains to leadership, and it's from Spider-Man of all movies. But when the old guy's like about to die or whatever, he like looks at young Spider-Man. He's like, with great power comes great responsibility, and I think that is a very important thing when you have team members and you're in a sense of authority that comes with a significant amount of responsibility. And I think in times like we are right now, that is magnified more than ever. And so it's important to remember that, you know, we are all very blessed to be in those positions to have people that come to work and work for us and work hard for us and those sort of things. But that carries a weight to it that I think is important that we constantly remind ourselves, because I would be nothing, you know, without them. I mean, literally, everything would crumble without my team. So I think that's a pretty good one. Spider-Man.
Awesome, dude. I'm grateful for having you. Not always, just on this webinar or anything in my life as a friend. We've done a lot of cool stuff together, and we've been through a lot of cool events together. As we continue to grow professionally, I look forward to, you know, just continue the friendship and watch you do amazing things and great things in life. And I know you will. You have a good heart. And hopefully before the end of, you know, us sitting home and just trying to get through this, maybe we'll bring you one more time just to talk about that, getting ready. Maybe we will know when that 7 to 10 days will be for sure. And then we'll talk again. Okay, let's hit the ground running. Like, what do we need to do and things like that. So it'd be awesome to have you back.
Yeah, man, for sure. Anytime. And this is fun, buddy. And same to you. I think that we're all lucky to have the support of each other. I think it's a big part that's going to make us all get through this. So
thank you, man. Blessed to have you.
All right. Talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye.